Greetings and welcome to the Movie Recap Vault. In this session we're presenting a 2011 action, mystery, sci-fi and thriller movie called Source Code. Colter Stevens wakes on a train en route to Chicago and is confused and disoriented. Christina, sitting on the chair facing him, tries to talk with him about giving her notice at work and calls him Sean, but Colter is too distracted by the noises and passengers talking to even respond to the conductor's request for his ticket. He also flinches when Christina tries to help him by reaching in his shirt pocket to get his ticket for the conductor. Colter leaves his seat and starts walking down the aisle. A redhead passenger calls for another passenger and gives him his wallet the man apparently lost. Colter follows and sees the passenger walk away from the train. Colter gets back on the train and returns to his seat to find Christina still sitting beside him. As he looks out the window, he catches a glimpse of his own reflection, but it's not his own face staring back at him. Intrigued and confused, Colter heads to the restroom to investigate further, where he discovers that the face he saw in the reflection belongs to someone else. He checks the ID in his wallet, and realizes that he's somehow taken over Sean Fentress' body. He leaves the restroom, and finds Christina waiting for him in the aisle. She's worried, and wants him to talk with her. He explains to her that he has no idea who Sean is or who she is. Christina tells him everything's going to be okay. The next second an explosion is heard and the inside of the train is enveloped in a fireball. When Colter wakes up in a capsule, he hears a woman's voice asking if he's okay and saying that he's with Beleaguered Castle. She asks him some questions, but he's still dazed and unable to answer properly. She starts a procedure to help him remember by reading a passage while showing visuals on the screen. Colter is initially not paying attention, but then he recalls parts of the exercise and repeats what he heard before. The woman asks him for her name, and Colter remembers that it's Goodwin. Colter notices a man, later identified as Dr. Rutledge, using a crutch in civilian clothes, appear briefly on the monitor. Colter asks to speak with his father. Goodwin dismisses Colter's confusion about his situation and instructs him to focus on finding out more information about the bomb, emphasizing that finding the bomb will lead to the bomber. Colter is returned to the train and finds himself in a similar but slightly different situation. He chats with Christina, who tells him about her plans to take an LSAT course, while Colter remains suspicious and convinced that he's in a simulation. He sets a timer on his watch and looks around. A passenger asks the ticket collector about delays, and Colter rushes to the guy and asks what he's late for, but the man only jokes around, leading Christina to tell Colter the guy is actually a comedian. As Colter continues to scan the train for anything suspicious, he notices the young redhead passenger pick up a passenger's wallet from a seat and return it to the passenger who just stepped off the train. The train doors close and the train begins moving again. After stepping back onto the train, Colter recalls that the explosion originated from behind him. He enters the restroom, closes the door and carefully inspects the area. He notices that the ceiling vent is not completely closed and he pulls it out of the way and looks above and finds a bomb. Although he's the only person in the space, he begins looking around and talking to Goodwin, suggesting he still believes that he's in a monitored simulation. He decides to leave the bomb and exits the restroom. Colter is in the aisle and holds up Sean's ID and tells the passengers that he's transit security and they need to turn off all electronic equipment. Several passengers just stare at him and a passenger near him refuses. Colter slams the man's laptop shut and punches him in the mouth. Christina rushes to help the injured passenger and scolds Colter. Colter tells Christina not to worry because he's not any more real than you are. Once again there's a massive fireball and explosion. Colter appears back in his capsule and gasping for air. Goodwin can be seen on the monitor, and she calmly tells Colter to stabilize and lower your pulse. As soon as he starts breathing normally, Goodwin asks if he found the bomb. Colter says yes. Goodwin wants him to tell her about the bomb. Colter gets agitated and asks where the man with the crutch is that he saw on the monitor. He said it looked like he was in charge and he wanted to talk with him. Goodwin says it's irrelevant. She again asks if he found the bomb. Colter tells her it's in the restroom, above the ventilation panel and the sink, and has a cell phone detonator. Goodwin says a cell phone call was made by the bomber, and they believe that it was detonated at the exact time a freight train was passing so the bomber could see both. She tells him to look for passengers that seem quiet, withdrawn or nervous. Colter asks if he's got 8 minutes and he blows up again, and Goodwin says yes. Colter is sent back to the train and wakes up. Christina remarks how quiet Colter is today and he says that he's got a lot on his mind. He asks the ticket collector if anything or anybody seems strange to him on the train today and the collector responds, "You're a little strange." Colter asks Christina to sit beside him and assess the passengers to see if they're suspicious, pretending it's a game. She starts joking around about various passengers when Colter asks what about the man who just left the restroom, and did she see anyone else come out of it. She tells Coulter that she saw him come out of there. The train has stopped at Glenbrook Station and the man gets off. Coulter kisses a surprised-looking Christina, and persuades her to get off the train with him and wait on a bench. Coulter follows the man from the train's restroom as he walks through the station and into the restroom. Once the man leaves the station, he sits on a bench near the rail tracks outside. Coulter sits down beside the confused man, and asks if he can borrow the man's phone. The man says no. Coulter then wrestles the man's briefcase away and punches the man. Coulter is kicked onto the tracks, and in the distance an explosion is heard and a large fireball is seen along the Chicago skyline. Christina pleads with Coulter to get off the tracks as a train approaches. The train hits Coulter. Coulter is back in his capsule and Goodwin is saying, "Captain Stevens, this is Beleaguered Castle, please respond." Coulter says it's freezing, then the lights dim in his capsule. Goodwin and other staff try to determine what's wrong and Dr. Rutledge tells them to keep sending Coulter strings and see if he responds. He doesn't have much time. Coulter scrambles with tools and jumper cables to restore power to his monitor and equipment when Dr. Rutledge hears Coulter call for Goodwin. Coulter tells him the capsule lost power and asks the man who he is. The man says he'll get Goodwin. Coulter asks if the man invented the unit and whether he's in charge. Dr. Rutledge says yes. Goodwin appears on the monitor. Coulter tells her that he was able to save one of the passengers on the train, and Goodwin tells him that saving a passenger is counterproductive to his mission. Goodwin tells Coulter that the train was the first attack and they believe that downtown Chicago is the next target, and they're planning to detonate a dirty bomb. Dr. Rutledge tells Coulter they're evacuating Chicago now, and they must stop the dirty bomb attack before it happens. Goodwin tells Coulter to get the loaded handgun in the strongbox in the conductor's compartment, and that he's authorized to use whatever force necessary. Coulter and Christina have similar conversations as past encounters, and Coulter anticipates and responds more appropriately this time. He's more determined to quickly catch the bomber. Coulter gets suspicious of a man talking on the phone and searches through his bag for something suspicious. He also notices a woman carrying a bag from an Army medical center and approaches her to ask about the letters on a military patch. The woman tells him that it represents the Air Force and Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Coulter uses her phone to call Nellis Air Force Base and ask for Rutledge. He tells the operator to tell him Captain Coulter Stevens is calling. Meanwhile, Christina tells Coulter that his friend died in combat in Afghanistan 2 months ago. Coulter smiles in disbelief, but then while staring at Christina, he experiences memories from Afghanistan, prompting Goodwin to guide him through memory exercises. Back in the capsule, Coulter immediately asks Goodwin if he's dead, that he heard a radio listing about his death in a helicopter crash that mentioned his father receiving a medal on his behalf. Goodwin reveals that part of his brain remains active. When Coulter questions if he's imagining his hands and feet moving and being in the capsule, Goodwin confirms that they're all manifestations, his brain's way of trying to make sense of everything. As the truth becomes apparent to Coulter, his core temperature immediately starts to drop. He imagines his capsule suddenly changing shape. Coulter wants to know where he is, and gets angry when Goodwin tells him his location is classified. Dr. Rutledge steps in and insists on sending Coulter back to the train to prevent another attack. He tells Coulter that he can't deviate from the mission while in the source code. Coulter informs Dr. Rutledge that he had called him from the train that morning. The doctor denies receiving any such call, stating that if he had, it would have been in a different reality altogether. He then reminds Coulter that the lives of 2 million Americans depend on the success of their mission, and that if he doesn't value his own life, he should at least value theirs. Dr. Rutledge sends Coulter back 2 more times and then says that they will continue until Coulter finds the bomber. Dr. Rutledge tries to motivate Coulter by playing an audio from Coulter's father talking about Coulter wanting to stay in battle to care for his troops. It works and Coulter asks to be sent back to the train. Coulter first gets the gun from the locker, and then goes to the bomb. He detaches the phone on the bomb and dials the only number in the phone's call log, and a man answers. As Coulter moves through the train while talking on the phone, he orders the man to turn around, but another passenger hears him and turns instead. Coulter sits next to the man and points his handgun at him. Coulter says the man can't kill anybody anymore, and he knows the guy was trying to trigger the bomb with his phone. The terrified man claims that he was talking to his wife, and begs Coulter to dial the phone he'd called again. Another phone rings on the train, and Coulter apologizes and quickly departs. Coulter hears the phone ringing outside the train and follows the man. The train doors close, but Coulter opens them using the emergency exit handle and jumps off to pursue Frost. As Coulter rolls on the platform, Christina sees him from her window and yells, "Stop the train." Coulter gets up and sees Frost beside a white van in a nearby parking lot. Coulter goes to the van and points his handgun at Frost and asks him if the phone and wallet is his. Frost smiles and chuckles and asks how Coulter knows so much. Frost slides open the side door of the van and there appears to be a huge bomb inside the van. Frost unlocks a large box and Coulter tells him to move away. Coulter gets in the van, opens the box and asks Frost where his next target is. Christina suddenly appears and calls for Sean. Frost shoots Coulter, who falls out of the van. Christina runs but Frost shoots her as well. Frost tells Coulter that the reason why he's doing this is because the world is hell, that it can be rebuilt in the rubble, but first there needs to be rubble. Frost drives away in his van. Coulter calls to Christina but she appears to die in front of him. Back on the train, a second phone attached to the bomb in the bathroom is seen activating and then the train explodes. Back in his capsule, Coulter tells Goodwin and Dr. Rutledge the name of the bomber and the license plate number on the white van that Coulter believes has a radioactive bomb inside it. Goodwin and Dr. Rutledge both thank Coulter. Coulter says he still wants to die but first wants to go back in and try to save all the people on the train. Dr. Rutledge says it doesn't work that way, but Coulter says he is asking for Dr. Rutledge to have the decency to send him back and let him try. Dr. Rutledge doesn't respond, he just stares at the camera. Aerial news footage shows Frost being stopped on a deserted road and surrendering before he detonates the second bomb. Dr. Rutledge gets praise from his organization. Goodwin again congratulates Coulter. They talk about parallel realities and afterimages. Coulter insists that there must have been a second phone on the bomb and if he's sent back he can save all the passengers. Coulter begs Goodwin to send him back to the train to save Christina, promising to sacrifice himself in the process. After some hesitation, Goodwin agrees and tells Coulter that she will terminate his life support at the end of his source code, and there will be no coming back. Coulter is suddenly happy and says he's going to save Christina. Goodwin says that it was an honor, thank you for his service, and good luck. Coulter and Christina are back on the train and Coulter asks her to skip work and have coffee with him. She tells him she's been waiting to hear that for a very long time. Coulter says he'll return in a few minutes, that he first needs to go and save the world. Goodwin walks into Dr. Rutledge's office and he tells her to start a memory wipe on Coulter and crunch the data. Goodwin reminds him that they agreed to let Coulter die. Dr. Rutledge says that Coulter may be the only person that his source code works with and to clear his memory and initialize another source code. Coulter confronts Frost on the train. He shows him his phone from the bomb in the restroom and puts the handcuffs on him, locking him to a railing. Coulter tells Frost that it's over. Using Frost's phone, Coulter contacts the police, divulging all the information he knows about the bomber, the radioactive bomb in the van, and where Frost currently can be located. Goodwin's co-worker asks her if he should initiate a memory wipe. Coulter takes Frost's phone and sends a text message to Goodwin. He states the memory rebuild string and mentions the train bomb. Coulter then calls his father. He tells his father that his name is Sean and he's a friend of Coulter, and was with Coulter when he died. Goodwin arrives at Coulter's capsule and opens the lid. Back on the train, Coulter hears his father say that he loved him so much and should have told him. Coulter says he knows it, and hangs up. Goodwin says you take care, Mr. Stevens. Coulter then returns to a happy Christina who asks if he saved the world. Coulter says sort of, where were we? Christina smiles and says, getting some coffee. An agitated Dr. Rutledge receives a call informing him that Goodwin is with Coulter. He summons MPs to join him at Coulter's capsule and demands the door be opened immediately, but Goodwin waits patiently inside for Coulter's 8 minutes to elapse. Coulter asks Christina what she would do if she had less than a minute to live, to which she replies that she would make every second count. They share a kiss. After Coulter's 8 minutes elapse, Goodwin says he's done enough doctor and switches off Coulter's life support, as the MPs enter the room to discover Coulter's lifeless body. The train doesn't explode, and Coulter assures Christina that everything's going to be okay. Coulter and Christina are walking outside in Chicago, and she stops in front of the Chicago Bean sculpture and looks at him. Coulter realizes that it's the same image he saw when in the source code, and he asks Christina if she believes in fate. She says not really, that she's more of a dumb luck kind of gal. Christina asks Coulter what he wants to do, and he says they should stay right there for a while, it's exactly where they should be. Goodwin sits down at her desk at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas and looks at a message on her phone from Coulter. Goodwin continues reading and learns that Coulter believes that instead of the source code creating just the last 8 minutes, it actually created a whole new world. He says he believes somewhere in their facility is a Captain Coulter Stevens ready to be sent on a mission. He asks her to help him and tell him that everything's going to be okay. The end. Please subscribe and like the video if you'd like to see more. Thanks.